In 2002, Spider-Man got a big budget movie from Sony. It got a movie tie-in game, which was the style at the time. So when Spider-Man PS2 came out in 2004, it got a game as well. This time though, this movie tie-in will be more impactful than anybody would ever know, creating a domino effect that people wouldn't realize until decades later. I know some of you are probably wondering how. Well, let's find out.
Make no sudden movements, Earthling. I require large amounts of your currency.
Sure, Space Dude, whatever you say, just don't disintegrate me or whatever.
How low the mighty have fallen.
So when it comes to the story, it's a bit all over the place. The reason why is because it follows the movie somewhat. So if you saw the movie, then you know what's going to happen. To beef up the story, it injects a few villains from Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. So with this being said, I'm going to break down which villains show up, why they show up, and how everything gets resolved. Let's start off with Rhino. Rhino shows up at the beginning of the game in a throwaway boss fight. They make him sound like a dumb oaf and you beat him up like one.
I'm gonna break your bones and make you cry for your mama.
Rhino.
The best thing about this is that you can continue to hit him after the fight.
You guys are such a
No
nuisance.
fair! Ah, let me go!
I think you zigged when you should have zagged.
Next up is Black Cat. Black Cat's missions boil down to you following her to a location, then taking on a group of enemies and beating up Shocker. Her whole purpose is to help Peter take his mind off all his problems. It ends with them going separate ways after she does something reckless that could have gotten them killed. Next up is a villain I just mentioned, and that's Shocker. Shocker first comes in during this event between Spider-Man and Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. He escapes during this event, leading to Spider-Man and Black Cat tracking him down. I will say his boss battles are pretty cool, the second one being the best of the two. Our last villain is Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. His whole thing is that he wants to prove that Spider-Man is a fraud. So he sets up all these stupid mini games and obstacle courses to prove it. The worst one is when he holds the Statue of Liberty hostage. The reason why this one is the worst is for multiple reasons. The first being the paths that you have to take to get to the damn thing. One route requires you to swing from these platforms. The problem is that the further you go, they get way too spread out, which leads to you falling in the ocean. Falling into the ocean sends you all the way back to the city. The route that is the only way to get there is to hang out these helicopters that slowly, and I mean slowly, get you to the statue. Now I know some of you can say, well, that's the point. He's Mysterio. He makes illusions and shit. Well, I say to that, fuck off. Once you get to the stupid thing, you have to take out these orbs to expose this giant brain. Yes, you heard me correctly, a giant brain. This will return the statue back to normal, but you better do it fast because they will respawn, making you take out each one again. And by the way, there's 8 of them. Did I forget to mention that these orbs are at the top of the statue? Did I also forget to mention that this game has fall damage? I would talk about Doc Ock and his fights, but honestly, it's not worth it. I will say it's bullshit that he can grab you through the ground during the last fight though.
Those plasma
This
bursts keep
experiment
coming
will
faster and
prove my
faster. I have
genius
to
for
shut down the
all
reactor
time.
or I'll be flash fried.
Pathetic.
Okay, I will say this though. The force fields, or whatever you want to call it, that thing can go to hell. Here's some clips on why I feel this way.
Peter!
Almost got it. Only one terminal left. Those plasma blasts are really dangerous. I have to be careful.
Hey, Parker, I have pizzas waiting to be delivered to customers because you weren't here. Hurry and deliver these, and don't mess things up.
You got it, Mr. Aziz. I'll deliver those pizzas before you know it.
So when it comes to visuals, I mean, come on, let's not. I will say that at the time they were doing something revolutionary with this game. That's why the game suffers visually. At least we have some of the cast from the movie doing their voices for their characters. Alfred and Kirsten, I can't remember how it's pronounced, gives it their all for the most part. But Toby, my man Toby does not give a fuck at all. And you can tell.
I wanted to. I even tried a couple of times, but
I think a part of me always knew.
now you see why I can't be with you. It wouldn't be fair to you. I was selfish to ask you. You should marry John.
So now let's finally break down the gameplay and why it changed the game. Let's start off with the web swinging and the world you're swinging in. This was the first game to pioneer two things that are staples in Spider-Man games now. The first one is being able to walk on the ground. In previous games, the ground was nowhere to be found and looked like a shitty acid trip. If the ground was there, it was blurry and an instant death if you got too low. This one was way more monumental than it sounds, trust me. It brought a whole new perspective and layers to the Big Apple. The next one is web swinging. This one is the biggest because before, Spider-Man would swing off nothing. I'm not exaggerating. Before this game, Spider-Man would just shoot his web in the air and attach to God knows what. In this one though, you have to be somewhat close to something to attach your web. This also came with a pendulum system that is momentum based. All of this combined really makes it feel like you're swinging through New York City. I have to say, it does feel rough around the edges after all these years, but it's the foundation, so I'll overlook it. Now let's talk about the combat, because this is where the game influenced another superhero game franchise, that being the Batman Arkham games. The first influence of those games is the free flow combat that everyone loves. Seeing Batman bounce from enemy to enemy like water flowing down a stream is euphoric. This game technically has it, but is nowhere near as refined, of course. Pair that up with the other big mechanic of the Arkham games, the counterattacks. In the Arkham games, when an enemy is about to hit you, Batman gets an icon over his head to counter. This happens in this game as well, and you have multiple attacks you can do afterwards. Here's some clips from both games to see what I'm talking about.
Let's deal with the web swinger first.
Batter up!
Despite the fact that I was playing terribly because I was still trying to learn the controls, along with the enemies consistently blocking everything, which becomes a huge problem further in, you can't tell me you don't see the similarities between the two. I mean, you absolutely can, but you would be lying, and that's not good for either one of us. Some of the moves and combos you unlock after some upgrades are awesome. My favorite combo is the one that lets you hang enemies from a traffic light. That one definitely needs to come back in newer games. When it comes to moves, there are three: the air power driver, spin kick, and repeatedly slamming enemies with your web. The air power driver can be done from great heights, and that's all I'm going to say about that. The spin kick is awesome for enemies you encounter later on because there are more of them. They also block everything from punches to your webs. It's so annoying. The spin kick after the dodge resolves all of that. The web slam is funny as hell to see. You can slam enemies up against a wall or a car. Also, this Spider-Man is fucking ruthless because you can throw enemies off buildings. Don't believe me? Look at this. You obtain all these sweet moves with upgrades. Upgrades are purchased using hero points. You get hero points from doing side missions and story missions. These side missions can range from saving people from falling off buildings to stopping an armed robbery, to my favorite one, getting jumped by a group of thugs. The reason why is because for some reason they harass a random pedestrian, hoping they will get in contact with Spider-Man. Once the person does, they just materialize out of thin air and start hitting the shit out of you. It's absolutely hilarious on so many levels, and I wish this would come back in newer Spider-Man games. It wouldn't be a complete review of this game if I did not mention pizza delivery side missions. The objective is to get the pizzas to the customer with minimal damage. You do all of this while listening to one of the most iconic songs of all time. Here, take a listen.
Hard to resist doing aerial acrobatics, but
it's extremely catchy. Once you hear it, there is no going back. Despite it sounding like it was performed on a recorder in the bathroom into a cell phone.
Make your announcement. Your fate is sealed.
run for your lives!
So that's pretty much it when it comes to this game. You essentially do this repeatedly until the game is done. There are collectibles, but I never bother with those kind of things. I hope I was able to fully articulate why this Spider-Man game was so important to superhero games. I know I missed out on some things, but I really wanted to cover the important aspects of this game. Also, there really isn't much to this game to begin with. This game is rough around the edges, but I overlook all of it because it was doing something unprecedented at the time. If you haven't played it, give it a shot and see where the foundation for the newest Spider-Man games was built.